What up, bros? What if I told you that I can make you do this and shoot a beam of light like you were Goku? What if I told you that you can play a character that can not only kill bosses, but it can clear maps very efficiently? And what if I said that eventually you two will be able to clear all of the Uber bosses without batting an eye? Come with me now while I teach you about my poison convert Crackling Lance character, courtesy of Jurio and the hive mind of my Twitch chat, as I walk you through step by step the offenses, the defenses, the gear progression, and how to get your character from starting out pre-convert to post-convert, and where I plan to take the character towards fighting Ubers. Because as it stands right now in Iteration 1, we're clearing a whole lot of content, and it looks as though it can only get better, and I'm going to show you how to do it and teach you my ways and the thought process that goes behind getting it to where I want it to be. Now, I know I've spent a lot of time saying I'm going to go over the gear, and I know you've probably already peeked at the POE and you've seen some items and you've seen some things. Don't stress, don't worry. I'll explain how everything works and what we're doing. Essentially, the biggest takeaway is that we're taking the skill Crackling Lance and we're working off the alternate quality gem of it, the anomalous side of it, to convert all of our damage to poison. And what I mean by this is there are alt quality gems or alternate quality gems that you can obtain from running grand heist or blueprints out of the heist league mechanic. And if you don't run heist and you don't like heist, you can buy these gems on the marketplace. They're very easy to obtain. They cost a little bit of money. Level 20 or 20 level 20 quality Crackling Lance was about a divine, maybe a little less. You can get level 16/20s for like 30C, 40C, and level them yourselves. It's very easy. But essentially what happens is when we hover over Crackling Lance and we press Alt on the anomalous version of it, you'll see that it reads 20% of lightning damage converted to chaos damage. And then with our skill tree and everything, we're going to turn that into poison. And the skill tree will make sense when we go over it. But we're going to do a lot of things with our gear that's going to scale poison damage to get us to that dot cap. And we're going to use a lot of skill gems that have alternate quality that'll work alongside of our gear to maximize the effect of what we're trying to do. Looking at the gear and going down the list, we're going to start with the weapon. The weapon was a work of art. The weapon was a pain in the butt. The weapon is something else. We started with an oscillating scepter that we fractured for +1 spell skill gems. The odds of getting the fracture are about 1 in 4. To fracture an item, you bring it over to harvest, you select fracture, and fracture means that it puts that stat line onto the item permanently. And in this case, we fractured level of all spell skill gems, which is why it has the gold bar of text on it. This made crafting the rest of the weapon easy, as we used essences to spam for lightning damage until we got +1 level of all lightning skill gems. It's about a 1 in 250, 300 or so to get that, so we spammed some of those. We then crafted on prefixes can't be changed, and we used an ashling to get on the chaos damage over time multiplier. Or if you don't want to use an ashling, we used an ashling because we were trying to do something a little bit different. You can use a veiled chaos orb, and you can go prefixes can't be changed, veiled chaos orb, and hope to unveil chaos damage over time. Craft on cast speed, and your weapon is a work of art. The weapon provides us with spell skill gem levels, which gives us +1 to all of our spell skills. The weapon also gives us +1 to our lightning spell skill gems, lightning damage to spells, chaos damage over time multiplier, and gives us cast speed. The cast speed will be a running theme that you'll see in a lot of pieces here, as we use the cast speed to push our attacks per second closer and closer to 8. In this current variant of the build, we have about 5.7 attacks per second. We haven't reached that 8 threshold. We have the helmet being serviced by a lab runner. We have to work on a couple pieces of gear. We need a few more levels. We need some gem levels. There's a couple of things that we still have to do to reach that 8 threshold, but we'll get there soon. One final thing I wanted to mention with the weapon is that we're using an oscillating scepter. And the reason we're using an oscillating scepter is for elemental overload. Now, elemental overload says skills that have dealt a critical strike in the past 8 seconds deal 40% more elemental damage with hits and ailments. Your critical strikes do not deal extra damage. Ailments never count as being from critical hits. Essentially, how the scepter reads and what the scepter is doing is that when we attack and we crit, we get Elemental Overload, which increases our lightning damage by 40%, and that lightning damage is then converted into chaos or poison, and that poison is infected as a dot, which deals more damage over time to the enemy. Thus, every time we crit, we deal more damage. More of that damage is converted to poison, and more of that poison kills the mob. Now, looking at our armor, I have a Skin of the Loyal, which gives us +1 level of socketed gems, which is really good for damage and increasing the alt quality of our gems. It gives us 100% global defenses, which is really good. Now, my current Skin of the Loyal has +2 level of socketed AoE gems. I was double corrupting them, hoping to hit a +3. When I say +3, I mean +1 the level of socketed skill gems, +2 level of socketed AoE gems. Now, through some testing, I believe Skin of the Lords is better. And when I finish leveling my gems and I corrupt them, I'll be doing some testing. I currently think that a Mage Bane or Mind Over Matter Skin of the Lords will be better for the build, but testing still has to be done. And once I have that information, I'll be releasing an update to this. But in the current state of the build, being able to do the content I can do, I have a Skin of the Loyal. Pretty simple, pretty easy, super cheap. I paid about 50C for mine, 150C for the double corrupt chamber. Don't double corrupt if you don't have a backup, but if you have a little money and you got a little gambling spirit, go for it. But otherwise, pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Moving along, we have our helmet, the Devouring Diadem Necromancer Circlet, which comes from the Katarina fight. This helmet comes veiled, so if you don't want to buy it already unveiled, you can buy it veiled and try to unlock what you want, but I recommend buying it veiled. A couple of the things that we're looking for in the helmet that make the helmet great for our build is level of socketed skill gems so that our auras get +1 and give us more defenses. The socketed gems have more mana reserve efficiency, so they cost us less mana. The helmet itself comes with a lot of energy shield, which increases our mana. And you're saying, wait a minute, what? Yes, our mana is increased by our energy shield because the helmet also gives us Eldritch Battery. And Eldritch Battery says spend energy shield before mana for your skills. Energy shield protects your mana instead of life, 50% less energy shield recharge rate. So essentially what happens is every time we cast a skill, it uses our energy shield as our mana, and then we can use more of our mana to reserve more of our auras. Also, the helmet gives us a 10% chance for energy shield recharge to start when you use skills. So since we're firing 5 to 8 attacks a second, 10% on that, we pretty much always have that up, and our energy shield is always recharging. Lastly, it gives us increased duration of ailments you inflict while focused at 81 to 90% depending on the roll. Now you can get 90% increased duration of ailments you inflict. This means I can press the focus button, shoot my Crackling Lance, and it'll have a 90% increased duration, which means more damage to the boss, which means things will die faster and you just deal a ton and a ton of extra damage. The helmet is really good. I highly recommend enchanting it with Crackling Lance, increased cast speed if you can get it. Other options include mana reservation on some of the skills, especially if you have an Ashes that isn't perfectly rolled quality. But we'll talk about the Ashes and how to obtain the Ashes shortly, as we leave that for last, since that is the keystone of the build that puts everything together. Now, moving along, we have our shield. We're using the Leper Alms Mirrored Spike Shield. We're using this for a couple of reasons. One, it gives us spell suppression, which we're going to use to cap our character's spell suppression. It gives us flat life, a ton of evasion and energy shield, 4% increased duration of ailments on enemies so that our poisons last 4% longer, and it also gives us shared suffering. Shared suffering says all damage from hits will cause elemental ailments you are suffering. Elemental ailments you inflict are removed from you. Elemental elements are Ignite, Scorch, Chilled, Frozen, Brittle, Shocked, and Sap. So, since we're doing a bunch of different elements, and we're attacking, and we're converting, and we have different ways to do different types of elemental damage, we can remove them all from us, which is really good. Also, we get 40% increased duration of ailments on our enemies, so our damage deals last 40% longer, plus a bunch of flat life, a bunch of flat energy shield, and this helps us get both evasion capped, and gives us more mana to cast our spells. So now we know about the weapon, the shield, and the helmet. And you said to me earlier, wait a minute, you told me this build can boss and map. And I said, I did, trust me. One of the things that makes this build so good for mapping is the gloves. I wanted to spend a minute talking about the gloves. We are using Ascendance Gentle Touch Silk gloves. And these came from Legion League. Now, these gloves are very cool and very interesting, very unique. They give us flat intelligence, flat life, flat mana, all wonderful stats that we can use for our build. They curse enemies with temporal chains on hit with a 40% increased effect. Temporal chains slows down the enemy, makes them do everything slower, which gives us a defensive layer because the enemies are slower. Also, non-curse auras you inflict are not removed from dying enemies. Now that's pretty good. The real kicker, though, is enemies near corpses affected by your curses are blinded. So, enemies die. The non-curse auras you inflict are not removed from dying enemies. The enemies near the dead guys get blinded, another defensive layer, and then the real icing on the cake. Enemies killed near corpses affected by your curses explode, dealing 3% of their life as physical damage. Now, we know Explode and we know how great Explode is, so why not give it to our build to make it go faster and do things well? The more mobs on a map, the more the death of Explosion, and the more things die faster. So when I open a map with a small density of mobs and I kill one mob, that one mob dies and explodes and hits a mob. Now, if I open a map with a lot of density and I kill a mob, that mob explodes and kills another mob, and kills another mob, and kills another mob, and chains and pops all across the screen. And it's very, very powerful, and it makes our map speed time go up astronomically as we can shoot a pack, poison it, move to the next one. That pack will die and explode. Hitting the next pack, that pack will get poisoned, die, and explode, moving on and moving on. Now, my specific pair of Ascendancy Gentle Touch gloves have increased cast speed on them and curse enemies with the Despair on hit. I managed to find these on the trade website. They were pretty cheap. I originally started with a regular pair of Ascendance gloves. They're like 5C a pair, and I started corrupting them. I had a pair with Despair on hit, as we are using 2 curses, and Despair increases the poison damage that the enemies are taking. And when I found a pair with cast speed, I picked those up to get and help me get to that 8% cast speed. Now, note, you don't need the 8% cast speed. I do recommend getting the gloves with Despair. If you can't get either pair, just having the gloves itself is fantastic. You don't need the implicits or the corruptions on them. They only help increase your clear, and you can get them eventually. One of the best ways to try to target these is to get the Divination card called Gift of Ascendance. This card is a set of 5, and it gives you a 2 implicit corrupted Ascendance Touch Gentle gloves, or Ascendance Gentle Touch gloves. These cards aren't very expensive at all. You should be able to pick them up relatively easily. They're about 15C a card, and they give you a good corrupted pair. Some pairs you can sell for profit and buy more cards, and it's one of those quality of life things. If you can get the cast speed, you're thrilled. If you can get the Despair, you're thrilled. You don't need them. They are more quality of life. They increase your damage. They help you push into Uber bosses. They help you cast faster. You don't need them for mapping. You don't need them for regular bossing, but you do need the gloves themselves. Our boots now. Our boots are very interesting and very unique. Our boots give us a couple of things. Ideally, we would want Onslaught in the suffix with Tailwind and poison damage, but we weren't that lucky in this case. So our boots currently give us Tailwind if you've dealt a critical strike. They give us Elusive in the prefix. They have crafted on Onslaught. They give us a little bit of resistance and a lot of chaos resistance. Now note, it's very important that when you make these boots, or you get these boots, you get them on fugitive boots, as we need to cap out our chaos resistance, and our chaos resistance is a big part of what we're doing. Secondary resist on it is actually not ideal. Ideally, our boots would have Tailwind, Onslaught in the suffix, and when we awaken or absorb them together, we hope to get Poison to Inflict, deal damage 11% faster. If you know a way that I can take Tailwind boots, Onslaught boots, slam them together, and have them roll with Poisons you inflict, I would love to know, because I have been trying and I haven't been able to do it. And the get Elusive on the boots, that's pretty simple. You just lock suffixes, reforge crit, get Elusive. But the boots, they're very good. They help your damage a lot. They give you a lot of beneficial modifiers, and if I could redo the boots, I would add life to them. As my life pool right now is 2,600, and I know that's scaring some people, but when we get to defenses, you'll understand that you don't need to worry. Your defenses are stacked through the roof, and you will be A-okay. Looking at our jewelry now, you're going to say to me, whoa, 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 I see some really expensive pieces. And we'll touch on them in a second. First thing I want to talk about is the Circle of Nostalgia Synthesized Amethyst Ring. We're going to use this ring in one of our ring slots, as it increases our chaos damage while affected by Herald of Agony. And Herald of Agony has a 44% increased buff effect. This ring's really important. It gives us a lot of flat damage. You really, really, really want to get these mods on the ring. The better the roll on these two mods, the better the ring will be. I got really lucky when I found mine. Mine came with increased poison damage. You don't need the increased poison damage. There are a lot of better rolls out there that you can get. And if you find one with Despair and Hit, you can actually use the ring with Despair and Hit instead of the gloves, or if you find one with cast speed. But there's a lot of ways to make this ring better if you find one with really good implicits. The more important part of the ring is the suffixes. As we just said, they increase your damage by a whole lot. Our second ring is a Hunter Influence Topaz ring. I'm using a Topaz ring because my defenses needed lightning resist. I needed to fill in my lightning resistance, so I had to grab a Topaz ring. Unfortunately, lightning was the hardest to cap, and I covered a lot of it with my Topaz ring, and that was a really good base for me to use. I grabbed the ring, I slammed it with a Hunter's Exalted Orb because it was cheaper at the time, and I couldn't really find a Topaz ring that had Hunter on it because nobody would answer. And then things that I did was I just slammed Essence of Delirium until I got the rolls that I needed. Something very important to note about the ring needs tier 1 strength. No matter what way you slice it, the ring needs to have at least 55 strength. You can get away with a high roll of tier 2 and add attribute modifiers, but the ring needs to have, and I will stress this again, at least 55 strength on it to be able to equip all your gear, use all your skills, and do everything that you need to do. So grab a ring that's Topaz with Hunter Influence, roll some Essence of Delirium on them until you get tier 2 or tier 1 strength, and then lock suffixes, reforge chaos, and hope to hit the poison mod. In my case, I did about 20 or 30 essences. I hit tier 1 strength with the poison mod. I called it good. I was done. I locked suffixes. I veiled chaos orb, and I got a life roll. I actually could teach you how to make this ring in my last video. Card up above over there. It'll show you how to make the rings. Self-plug, let's go. Anyways, the ring is not bad. The ring is really good. It adds a ton of damage, and the better the poison roll, the more damage you do. I know I'll be making or remaking this ring, hoping to hit tier 2 or tier 1 Hunter mod for increased poison damage over time. Now, I know you guys see the Mageblood. The Mageblood is a Mageblood. We know what Mageblood does. We know it's very strong. For those of you who don't know, Mageblood reads the left foremost utility flask, constantly apply their flask effect to you. Magic utility flask cannot be removed. Magic utility flask cannot be used. These flasks are constantly on, they're constantly working, and they constantly provide us a buff and benefit. For this build specifically, you do not need Mageblood. I happen to have Mageblood. I happen to be using Mageblood. You can get away with a Stygian Vice. You can get away with a lot of things and a lot of other alternatives. You do not need Mageblood. Mageblood is a nice quality of life. Mageblood gives us more defenses. You might not be as tanky without Mageblood, but you could still get away with not using Mageblood. The thing that you can't get away from, and the thing that you absolutely need though for this build, is Ashes of the Stars. The idea behind the whole build is that we're using alternate quality gems, and we'll go over all the gem links in a minute and we'll talk about them. And why we're going to use Ashes is because Ashes gives us 20% quality of all skill gems. So since we're using a bunch of alternate quality gems, they give us more power. And I know you're looking at my Ashes and you're saying, I can't afford a 2029 Ashes. When I say 2029, what I mean is the increased reservation efficiency of skills is 20. The alt quality of skills is 29. Now, the important part of the Ashes, yes, quality is important as quality increases all of our damage, but the very, 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 very important part that you need is the increased reservation efficiency of skills. As long as that's 20%, you are golden, you are good. And you're going to say to me, that's also still really expensive. And I am aware. What I did to get my Ashes is a trick I'm going to teach you. I went onto the marketplace. I bought the cheapest Ashes I could find. It was like the worst rolled Ashes I've ever seen. It cost me 20 divines. Yes, very expensive, I know, but you need it. From there, I knew that if I got the Ashes I wanted, I would spend 60. So that gave me a 40 divine window. I took one divine and I rerolled my Ashes. And I know what you're saying, but that's a divine. Yes, would you rather spend 1 to reroll or 60 to buy the one you need? Now, if you have the bankroll and you want to do it, great. But hear me out. The first Ashes that I rolled a 1929 on one divine. I then sold that one for 50 divines. used the 50, bought another 22 divine minimum rolled ashes, and then did the process again and made profit. You could make a lot of profit buying bad ashes and re-rolling them to near perfect. See what I'm telling you here? Buy a bad one, use a divine or two, try to roll it good, and if you roll it anywhere near respectable, resell it for profit. People will buy ashes, especially if you roll them well. If you roll 1530, you make money. 1830, you make money. 1828, you make money. 1527, you make money. And if you at any point hit 20 on reservation and X in quality, you're golden and you're done. And it's easy. So you might even at this stage in the league, or Calandra League, might be able to just find a 20 reservation and bad quality one for super cheap. Buy that one for now, throw it on, and boom, it all works out and you're set. Now, I know we talked about our armor, we talked about our weapon and our shield, and I wanted to point out a couple of things. Both offensively and defensively, these stats bring together the following. Looking at our POB, whoosh, I always loved to do that. Looking at our POB, we can see that with our skill gems capped out and leveled at 20, and our awakened gems, we can have our calculations set up, and we can hit a total DPS in our current state of 35 million. Now, the dot cap is roughly about 32 to 33 from the research I've done. So we hit that dot cap pretty easily with our current set of gear once all of our skill gems are leveled. You'll notice too, our effective hit pool is 133,000 at level 97. This will get better as we make more adjustments to our gear. Our max physical hit is 143,000. Our max elemental hit 95,000. Our max chaos hit 71,000. We have 2,600 life that can only go up from here. We have about 1,500 energy shield. We have 40,000 evasion, giving us an evasion chance of 82%, 92% with the tree. We are at spell suppression cap. We are at physical damage reduction cap. We have 75 all resist and 80% chaos resistance. We can take a hit, we can deal damage, and our character is pretty beefy. Don't let that fool you. Our character is insanely beefy. Now, I know a lot of you guys were asking about the ashes and the gem links and everything like that, and I wanted to express a couple of things. These skills that we're using in our body armor will be Crackling Lance level 21 Anomalous. We use Anomalous very specifically, as Anomalous Crackling Lance converts our lightning damage to chaos. The higher the quality, both from ashes and from the Crackling Lance, the higher that our conversion rate is, thus leading to more damage. We're going to pair that with an Enhance. The higher level the Enhance from 1 to 4, and then Awaken level 5 means more quality on the gem, means more conversion. Going alongside that, we use an Anomalous Spell Echo, so our supported skills have a 10% increased cast speed. We're going to be using an Awakened Elemental Focus so that we deal more damage, an Awakened Deadly Ailment so we deal more damage over time, and Awakened Unbound Ailments so that we just have more duration of our elements. Our Crackling Lance is stacked. It's very important we use Anomalous Crackling Lance. Very important we use Anomalous Spell Echo. You'll notice in a lot of other pieces of our gear too, like in our shield, we have a Malevolence set up on Divine Blessing. Our Malevolence is Divergent. We use Divergent because it increases our damage with ailments. We're stacking alt quality gems. When you look at the POB and you see all of these alt quality gems, it's very, very, very important that you get these alt quality gems, as they will make your life great. Since that's the whole point of the build. So your Herald of Agony is Divergent, your Plague Bearer is Divergent. Your Vitality is Divergent, your Withering Step is Divergent, your Defiance Banner is Divergent, your Determination is Divergent, your Purity of Elements is Anomalous. Your Lightning Golem, your Molten Shell, and your Cast Damage Taken setup is all anomalous. You can read all about what all these anomalous gems do in the POB. There is a lot of gems. They all have amazing abilities, and they stack to the moon thanks to Ashes. Now, looking over at our skill tree, you're going to see something very important. We rolled a Cultist. I know a lot of the Crackling builds currently do not play Cultist, but we're playing a Cultist for a very specific reason. The first reason is we get Malediction. Malediction says we can apply additional curse. Since we're using Despair and Temp Chains, they go together. Malediction also increases the effectiveness of our curses by 15%, and our curses have malediction. Enemies with malediction deal 10% reduced damage and take 10% increased damage. So from just having this node, we get a ton of extra curses, and we can just do more damage and just have better quality of life. Second, we have Profane Bloom, which gives us the ability to hex cursed enemies, or hex. It gives us the ability to curse hexproof enemies, curse enemies. Cursed enemies that you and your minions kill also explode, so it's the second source of exploding. Why Profane Bloom is so strong, you see I even stumble my words over it. Lastly, we have Withering Presence, which gives us a ton of chaos resistance, more chaos damage, and every second inflict wither on nearby enemies for 15 seconds. Nearby hindered enemies deal 15% damage over time. Wither applies 6% increased chaos damage and can be inflicted up to 15 times. So between that and withering stuff, we just get our wither up to 15, and it just goes nuts, you know? Yeah, it's awesome. We also get Void Beacon, which lowers the chaos resistance of the enemies by 20%, and nearby enemies have 100% reduced life regeneration rate. So that's pretty strong. On our skill tree, you'll notice that we have a Timeless Jewel. We have a Glorious Vanity. It's very important that we get the Glorious Vanity of Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe changes the node known as Pain Attunement in our tree to Divine Flesh. Divine Flesh makes it so that all damage taken bypasses Energy Shield. 50% of elemental damage is taken as chaos damage, and 5% to our maximum chaos resistance. This is how we get our chaos resistance to 80%. Now, the seed on Zimbabwe doesn't really matter so much. You'll use it to fill out your remaining stats. In my case, I need a little bit of extra spell suppression and cold resistance because of how my gear rolled. You might need other things. I'll include a link to a website down below in the comments that you can use to search up a bunch of different timeless jewels that'll be able to help you out. What you'll do is you'll go to the website, you'll put in the timeless jewel, you'll put Zimbabwe, you'll put what you're looking for, whether it's spell suppression, cold resist, lightning resist, fire resist, or anything that you're looking for, and you'll find one. The biggest takeaway from the chaos, or the biggest takeaway from the timeless jewel, is that it converts to our divine flesh. You'll see the tree is extremely straightforward. We stick mostly to the right side of the tree as it gives us all of our poison nodes. We have things such as Ghost Dance, we have a bunch of life nodes, we have a bunch of poison nodes, we take poison masteries, and we take 2 wheels for reduced effect of auras, or reduced effect of mana reservation, increased effect of auras. So those 2 nodes are very important. We take a bunch of nodes going all the way down the Mageblood so that we can hit spell suppression cap, and we leave room for 2 clusters. The first cluster that I want to talk about is our large cluster. Our large cluster gives us Unholy Grace, Unwavering Evil, and Wicked Pal, or Pal. Wicked Pal gives us skill effect duration and chaos damage. Unholy Grace gives us chaos damage and more attack and cast speed. Unwavering Evil gives us chaos damage and chaos skills. Ignore interruptions from stuns. Not as important. The other 2 very important. In that, we have socketed 2 mediums. The first medium is Student Decay, Vile Reinvigoration. Student Decay gives us damage over time and chaos resistance. Vile Reinvigoration gives us damage over time, more energy shield, and regenerate 2% of energy shield per second if you killed an enemy recently. More energy shield means more mana means more skill cast means more enemy dies, and we never have to worry about using our mana alongside Mind Over Matter, especially since you're aiming for 100 on this build and you have Mind Over Matter as another defensive layer. Having 40% of your damage taken from mana before life means you blow through your mana pretty quick, so you want a lot of mana back. The second cluster jewel that we go over is another chaos damage over time, which gives us Brush with Death and Circle of Oblivion. Brush with Death deals 5% damage over time and gives us 1% life and energy shield recovered on kill, another layer for mapping that'll just increase our regeneration rates. We're going to take Circle of Oblivion here for increased damage over time and 15% duration of ailments on enemies. These 2 clusters in large are very strong. We also need to use them so that we can fit in socketed jewel sockets in a second that we'll talk about. The second large cluster is a 12 passive large with 35% increased effect, chaos resistance, and max life. The third stat doesn't matter. I pretty much took a 12 passive large chaos cluster. Excuse me. I put it into Harvest. I reforged chaos a bunch of times for chaos resistance until I got 35% increased effect. I then Exalt Slam, hit life, called it a good day. Yes, I Vision Slammed my cluster. It was absolutely wonderful. The big takeaway from the cluster is you need 35% increased effect and 4% chaos resistance as the big starting points, as that is how we get our chaos resistance cap to the 80%. The life is great. Life gives us more effective HP, and that you don't die as much. If you can get the life, great. If not, there are other options that you can take, including dex, other resistances, and you can find the life elsewhere. We're going to take 2 mediums inside of this large, one for Circle of Oblivion with Unwavering Energy, with Unwaverly Evil. Another Unwavering Evil gives us 30% chaos damage. This node can be replaced with any chaos damage node and any node that gives us more damage over time. In my initial testing, this is what I had access to, and this is what I began working with, so this is what I'm using. The other node, Circle of Oblivion, increased damage over time, duration of ailments on enemies. This one is very strong. The last medium cluster, Circle of Oblivion, Flow of Life. This one's important. Flow of Life, increase damage over time, increase maximum life, regenerate life per second. If I were to redo all of my clusters, I would keep the Brush with Fear one, and they'd all probably be Circle of Oblivion / Student of Decay with Flow of Life to get more life, more damage over time. I just don't have the money and resources right now, and this is iteration 1 of the build, and as I progress it and move it forward, I'm going to be changing all of my clusters to very similar to this. So if you're watching this and you have a nice budget and you can do it, or you have these clusters laying around, I would recommend using those. Now, in all of our clusters, we have jewel sockets. We're going to talk about a Flesh and Flame combo that we're going to use. This Flesh and Flame combo, at the time of recording, was insanely cheap. I cannot guarantee that it'll be insanely cheap when you watch this for a couple of reasons. 1, it's the end of Calandra League. 2, mini events are starting in a few days. 3, you're probably watching this and immediately buying it, so that means somebody else is buying it. When I bought these were pennies on the dollar. We're going for Commander of Darkness, as auras from your skills grant 3% increase in cast and attack speed to you and enemies. You and nearby allies deal 30% increased damage and have 30% increased resistance. From my testing, this looked like to be the best Flesh and Flame combo. If you're playing this, or you're looking into this, or you're doing a POB dissection, and you find a better one, please let me know in the comments down below. I would love to find a better one to take this build to the next level. So, get those. They're important. I use a Grand Spectrum as well for max life. The max life Grand Spectrum, a little pricey. You can actually farm these yourself. There are plenty of guides, and I am currently working on one to teach you how to farm your own. Pretty much the TLDR. Open up normal labs, blitz the end, open the chest, hope to get a Grand Spectrum. If your build can do Tribute to the Goddesses, run Tribute to the Goddesses, open all the silver rooms, all the silver caches, and hope to get a Grand Spectrum, as this build uses 3 of them. We're going to use the Frenzied one, so that we have 3 Frenzy charges at all time. We're going to use the Max Life one, so we get 15% increased life. And then the last one that we're going to use is for Endurance charges, and that one gives us 3 minimum Endurance charges, which gives us a big boost to our effective HP. The Frenzy one gives you more damage and more attack speed. It's good. It's nice. You don't need it right away. The Endurance charges, I would say, are probably a little bit more needed, as they give you more defenses. And the Max Life one you could probably do without if you want to find Max Life in other spots. You can get a nice jewel that gives you life or percent life. You don't need to grab that one. That one is just quality of life. But I do recommend 3 Grand Spectrums in some aspects or some sense, because if you have the minimum Endurance charge one, you'd like to get the 3 charges. Lastly, we're going to be talking about our Watcher's Eye. Our Watcher's Eye is pretty simple and pretty basic. All it does is it gives us Vitality. Gain 30 life per enemy hit while affected by Vitality. We attack real fast. We do a lot of damage, and having that Vitality on our Watcher's Eye means that we have a good upkeep of our life regeneration. For a bonus, if you can afford it, damage over time multiplier while affected by Malevolence will increase our damage through the moon. You do not need it. It is extra damage. You don't have to go nuts for it. Only go nuts for it if you really want to push into doing Uber bosses or higher tier content. But for now, just focus on a Watcher's Eye with Vitality. The Purity of Elements in my Watcher's Eye does absolutely nothing. We're not really worried about it. We do have Purity of Elements, so the elemental weakness is nice, but quality of life. You find a good 3 passive Watcher's Eye, use that one. Not a big deal. Thankfully, that's everything that our skill tree covers. Now, lastly, I want to leave you with the following. How to play the build. Build is really simple. Hold right click, blow up map. That's it. Super simple. And then when you get to a boss, you're going to do two things. You're going to press your focus button, you're going to press your malevolence, and you're going to hold right click. Cast when damage taken setup gives you Molten Shell, gives you your little golem, Withering Step on left click, and just don't think. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Open a map, hold right click, blow it up, get to a boss, press your buffs, blow it up, shoot one time, fill your Plague Bearer, turn your Plague Bearer on. That's really it. Just run around, press your Plague Bearer button, go nuts. It's an absurdly simple build. It's really easy and really fun to play, and I hope you try and like it. If you tried it, you think it's great, or you're planning on trying it, let me know down below in the comments. For me going forward, my plans are as follows. I'm going to try to push this build more into Ubers. Right now I can clear Uber Cortex, but it struggles a little bit with the other bosses as I want to change up some things and get Mind Over Matter. And then outside of that, in a couple days, the mini events are starting for Mayhem on Calendra League. I'm going to be exploring those and releasing a POB talking about what I'm doing for those leagues. And we'll go from there. If you like what you've seen and you haven't already done it, don't forget to comment, like, subscribe down below. Join us in the Discord as we hang out. We talk about all our different builds and we work together and we teach crafting lessons and all kinds of fun stuff. And hey, maybe you'd be a part of it. Maybe you could teach us something. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And lastly, I'll be over on Twitch. If you're not following me on the Twitch stream, come on over. But I'm going to go work on this. I'm going to go run some more maps. I'm going to farm some more currency. And then I'm going to get ready for all the mini events and everything else that Calendra League has to offer. For now, have a wonderful evening. So long, farewell, good night.
Resisting. Reality bends. Punishment